Marriage. Marriage. When two people come together. Welcome back to Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham. This is my good buddy, Ty Franck. Ty Fezzywink. How you doing, Ty?
I'm doing good.
Marriage.
It's not my fault I'm bigger and stronger. I don't even exercise.
Well, I mean, if it isn't obvious, what are we going to talk about today?
We're talking about one of the greatest family movies of all time. When I was like probably, I don't know, when did this come out? When I was like 19
87.
maybe? Okay, so 18. This came out when I was 18 or 19. I was still kind of around the family and the religion and all that stuff. And, you know, the uptight, you're not allowed to go to movies that have sex or violence or whatever. And this movie came out, and I know it didn't do well initially at the box office, but if the uptight religious people that I was hanging around with were the only audience, this movie would have been the biggest hit of all time. The Princess Bride, it was the most watched, like, family. It's okay to watch, even if you're like uptight religious person. I must have seen this thing like 8 times at the theater. And the reason is because every time people were like, hey, we should go to the theater. What's on? And it would be like, you know, Young Guns 2 and, you know, like all that stuff. And Princess Bride, we all fucking went to Princess Bride again. Fortunately, unlike most of the movies that are like that from my childhood, The Princess Bride was actually great. And so I didn't mind going and seeing it 8 times.
I thought a lot about this movie, you know, obviously getting ready to the podcast, but I remember when I watched it for the first time, and it was something where I was like, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't something that immediately took hold of me, right? I was like, that's interesting and something I've never really seen before, but I never stopped thinking about it. And then when it came on, it has a great rewatchable quality to it. And then when it came on, you would watch it, and over time, I would start to like it more and more and more, where initially it wasn't like that. And I thought about it, and I kind of, so, you know, I thought about it before going in. I was like, what makes this movie stand out? Like, why is this such an interesting movie to talk about? And why was this movie not a hit when it came out, but it's got this everlasting power where, you know, millennials quote Princess Bride constantly, the memes and everything. It's omnipresent always. And I started thinking about it, and it's like, to me, it's a fairy tale that works as a fairy tale, but it's a spoof that works as a spoof.
Yep.
But the characters in the fairy tale don't know they're in a spoof. And it's earnest and honest and real, and the humor is sweet, it's optimistic, and it's kind of timeless in a way. Whereas a lot of contemporary comedies that are really striking the iron, you know, that make you laugh the hardest when you're in the moment, because culturally it's like right that center and it makes you laugh the hardest and it makes the biggest impact. They don't have that kind of staying power, because as culture moves on and progresses, you kind of forget about those things.
Yep.
But this is something, this comedy is timeless, and it gets funnier the more I watch it, the older I get, the more mature I get. But there's a sweetness to it. There's an innocence to it that I rarely see. And I mean, even if you think Shrek, like I think Shrek was heavily influenced by this movie. It's kind of the same thing that it's trying to do. It's a really complex to make a movie like this work, because it works on many levels and many different genres. But Shrek the characters are aware they're in a little bit of a spoof. Like they always look over the kid's head and look at the adults and kind of give them a wink. But, you know, Farm Boy and Princess Buttercup, like, they're fucking in love, man. And they, like, you know, and obviously the movie's about love, right? But what I didn't know is all the other love stories besides the main love story that are in it. And Farm Boy and Princess Buttercup, their love is the engine of the movie. But the Peter Falk grandfather and the Fred Savage grandson is the love that frames the movie. They have an arc as he's reading the story. And then the friendship between Manny Patinkin and Andre the Giant, that love story. And even Prince Humperdinck. Humperdinck. Even Prince Humperdinck has a little love.
And the Six-Fingered Man?
Yeah, he has a great friendship with with Christopher Guest. Like, he's like, oh, I love to watch you work, but I got my wife to murder. Like, I'm swamped. And so there's just such a sweetness and a beauty to it, and the fairy tale works on its own merit because the characters don't know they're in a fairy tale.
Yeah, the only other movie that I could think of off the top of my head, as you were saying that strikes that same balance, is Galaxy Quest. Because Galaxy Quest is a spoof of Star Trek, but it's also a love letter to Star Trek. And none of the characters in the movie know that they are in a spoof. Everybody's playing it straight. And you're right, The Princess Bride does that. It's a spoof of fairy tales, but it's also a love letter about fairy tales. And it loves the fairy tales that it's spoofing. And the characters in it are playing it straight. They don't know they're in a spoof. So the emotional core of the movie is never made fun of.
I never saw I never did watch, I watched like half the first episode of that soccer show that everybody loves so much.
Ted Lasso?
Ted Lasso, but
the first season of Ted Lasso is a perfect season.
But does it have a similar type of comedy, like a sweet comedy, a hopeful comedy? It's not cynical. Yes. It's not, there's no irony.
I think that's why Ted Lasso was such a hit when it came out, because it came out right in the middle of the COVID lockdowns.
Yeah.
And Ted Lasso is incredibly hopeful, and its humor is never about making fun of people or hurting people. That's never what the humor is about. And as a person, I've always thought humor is ultimately about cruelty and pain. It was eye-opening to watch a show be very funny, where it wasn't about pain, it wasn't about cruelty. It changed my whole view of how humor can work. So yeah, it was. But yes, it's a good example of what you're talking about.
It was really nice to watch, before this, because it was, everything right now is just so combative and cynical and irony and political, and just to watch something like even, you think about the relationship between Manny Patinkin and Andre the Giant, the friendship between him and Manny Patinkin. And so like it starts off when he's with Wallace Shawn and they kidnap the girl, and so they're bad guys, because he's like, but they don't want to kill the girl, but obviously they might have killed some people in the past, and they're there. But when Wallace Shawn hurts his feelings, and then they start doing the rhyme thing, the rhyme thing between each other, it's so sweet that you immediately like them, and you flip on them being the bad, because as a kid you look like those are the bad guys, these are the good guys, and you looked at and when they start doing the Rhine game, it was just such a smart, fun way to get you to like them and to realize like, oh, there's going to be a hopeful future for them in the character development. And Shawn and Wallace Shawn, he's the pure bad, and the guy that you're rooting against, he's bullying these guys, he's bullying this giant. And what's interesting is that originally Arnold Schwarzenegger wanted to play that part of Andre the Giant.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and when they were trying to put the movie together in the 70s, Arnold really wanted to do it, and by the time they got to put it together, he was too expensive for the movie, so he wasn't able to do it. But I look at Andre the Giant, and he's somebody that he didn't choose his size, right? There's something, he has a condition that made him the way he is. And there's something very vulnerable about that, even though he's fucking massive. I think he's like 7 foot, 500 and something pounds. But it's almost like a sweet man trapped in this gigantic body, which makes him vulnerable, which makes the movie work so well. His humor works so well because he's a man of violence, but he doesn't really pay attention to the violence that he does. He's just like, and the comedy in the combat, like that whole first act is great, but the combat where he has to fight the guy with the steel, and then he fights the Andre the Giant, and he's like, wait, I've never fought one person before. And so it's like, it's like all that stuff.
It's been so long since I fought one person. You use totally different tactics when you fight a gang.
And then there's just something so aware in Arnold, and there's something so like, obviously he's built his physique to be where it is. There's an edge there that I don't think could have worked in that part.
No, I think Andre the Giant was physically the perfect person to play the Andre the Giant character. I mean the Fezzik the Giant characters, because exactly what you're talking about. He's gigantic, but he doesn't look like he spends a lot of time in a weight room. He's just gigantic. That's just him. And
Well,
that's why the line is so great.
Yeah.
I don't even exercise. It's not my fault I'm the biggest and strongest.
Yeah,
The sweetness, they give him sweet moments. Like there's that, where Carrie Elway is giving him a bunch of body shots, like hitting him in the gut over and over again. And he's just looking at him. And eventually Carrie Elway's like, "You're toying with me, aren't you?" And Fezzik goes, "Well, I wanted you to feel like you were doing well." like you just, like the punches don't hurt me, so I'll go ahead and let you hit me a few times so that you feel like you're doing a good job.
And Rob Reiner's he's really great at this. I mean, if you think about Spinal Tap, you think about like how and the key is, again, like going back, the characters don't know that they're in a spoof, and the backstory of Mandy Patinkin. How do you say his name? Iago Montana. What is it?
Mandy Patinkin. Inigo Montoya.
Inigo Montoya. And so when it's really funny when Carrie Eloise is trying to climb up the wall, and he's like, "Could you hurry it up, please?" And he says, "I have to tell you, when you come up here, I'm going to kill you." But then when he's saying, "Can you take the word of a Spaniard or let me throw a rope down?" And he's like, "I don't trust you to throw a rope down." And then he says, "I promise on my father." And then he gives, you really moved by the promise. Yeah. And so the performances are really good. The actors are very good, and they are dead set on what it is. They're not playing for the comedy. Maybe Wallace Shawn is a little bit, but the other characters are dead earnest, dead honest, and that's why the comedy works so well.
Well, and you've got a bunch of actors who we would realize later were fucking rock stars. But at the time, like Carrie Elway had been in a few things, but we didn't know him. Like he wasn't a huge name yet.
What was he in a few things? I don't remember him.
Yeah, he'd been in a few things.
He was like Brad Pitt's
Lady Jane and The Bride.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of Robin Wright. Robin Wright had been in a few things, but she wasn't the megastar she was going to become later. Mm-hmm. Mandy Patinkin had been in a few things, but he wasn't like a household name by any means.
So good in this. He was
but
so
like
good.
You have all these people who are about to become rock stars and aren't yet. And so we don't have any expectation of them. And then they come in, and like you said, Inigo Montoya is so heartbreaking. He's so heartfelt. Like there's so much tragedy driving his story. And Fezzik has that sweetness. He just feels like he's like just a big child, right? Deadly, but like a big child. The love story between Robin Wright and Carrie Elway is played so earnestly, so honestly, that even though we're in the middle of this silly fairy tale comedy movie, you never for a second doubt that those two are in love with each other. There's just amazing performances through the entire thing.
And if you think about other spoof movies like Airplane or Naked Gun or Hot Shots or, those sort of things, them playing for the comedy and aware, and the story and how the story moves you takes a back seat to the jokes. So it's like they just kind of throw a plot together to just do a sequence of jokes through the whole movie.
It's like a Family Guy episode.
Yeah, the movie doesn't the movie doesn't really mean anything. It just makes you laugh, and it's a good time and everything at the end. And those movies are good, and they have their place. But William Goldman, I'm sure you've read Adventures in the Screen Trade and read, How Many Lies I've Told or whatever that book. He talks about The Princess Bride. It's the one story of his that he truly loves. It's his favorite thing that he's ever written. Yeah. And it's extremely skillfully written and directed. And so many people, it's so easy to fuck that up. It's so hard to do. But what's interesting is that his daughters, he was going to LA to work on a movie, and his two daughters were like, he was going to write a story for his two daughters. And he says, "What do you want me to write about?" And one says princesses, and the other one says brides. And that's where he got The Princess Bride. So he's like, okay, Princess Bride. So he wrote them a fairy tale. So obviously there's so much love that he has for their daughters that kind of filters through this story. And it's so sweet because he was so specific to his audience that when, like, he bought the rights to the book back himself. He sold it in the 70s. It wasn't going the way he wanted. He bought it back, and he was deeply involved, more than any other thing he's ever written, with Rob Reiner. He's on set every day. They said that his Mike, when he's watching the set, he would ruin takes because he was praying that the movie would work. He was so anxious about it. And so there's something about, because I'm a big William Goldman fan. I love him as a writer. I respect him. I love him as a writer, but even as a person and how he sees the business, like his books about the business and his point of view towards the business, I'm a big fan of that as well.
Yeah. And there's a reason why his books about writing screenplays and working in the film industry are the standard that everybody reads them. Like if you go into a writer's room, the newest assistant and the crustiest old showrunner, the one thing they will all have in common is they've read all of William Goldman.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the thing everybody does. I had not read Adventures in the Screen Trade when I first started in TV. And Hallie, who was our writer's assistant on the first season, gave me her copy to read. So, yeah, I mean, it's knowledge that we hand. It's like the stone tablets, right? William Goldman wrote the stone tablets, and each new person who comes into the tribe must be handed the tablet so they can read the laws. Yeah.
There's something so honest about him. So because he's so honest with himself, he can see the business as it is. As opposed to, most of us project onto what the business is and what we want to see or whatever.
He's an interesting guy because when you read his stuff, he is incredibly cynical about the movie business.
Oh, yes.
Incredibly cynical.
Right. And
yet his love for the movie business comes through on every page. So it's this weird mix of deep, deep cynicism and also love for the thing. I don't know many people who have that weird dichotomy of like the thing that they're the most cynical about is also the thing that they love the most.
Oh, I know a lot of people like that, especially in the creative community because, number one, they're extremely sensitive. Number two, they care so deeply about what they do. So if you care so deeply, what happens when that thing is messed around or fucked with? You get, you get afraid.
I think the thing is, I just don't care about things. So I never developed that cynicism.
Yeah. Somebody had a theory that, anyway, Joseph was like, no, stay on task. Cause I was good. Don't worry, Joseph. We're going to stay on task. But what did you think about Billy Crystal I thought he was fucking great. I appreciated him more on this viewing than I have in the past.
And Joseph, the
nice MLP.
Carol King.
Mutton with the
I have always been a huge Carol Kane fan. I think she's fucking hilarious.
Liar.
And the combination of her and Billy Crystal as the old couple, the old Miracle Max couple, is one of the highlights of the movie. It's one of the best things in the entire movie. And the thing is, they're both fantastic.
So the Dread Pirate Roberts is stone cold dead, and he lifts up his hand, and the hand just falls, and he goes, "I've seen worse." It just kills me. Yeah, nice MLT. Mutton, lettuce, tomato.
Yeah, when the tomatoes are really ripe.
The tomatoes are really ripe, and again, their relationship ties into the theme, right? Because he says true love, but ever since Humperdinck fired him, he lost his confidence.
Yep.
And when Carol King comes out, she's like, "You're fucking lying. You're lying. He said true love. You just don't have your confidence." And so she believes in him and restores his confidence. And there's a sweetness to the couples. Now, is there?
No, she believes him and she restores his confidence by mocking him and taunting him into doing it. Yeah, when he's like, why don't give me a paper cut and pour some lemon juice in it? It's like she's just like bringing up all of his worst failures and his worst insecurities. He say,
"Go away, you witch! Get out of here, you witch!"
It is the standout scene. It is the funniest single scene. Is the two of them, and it's two fantastic comedians at the height of their powers in a short, high intensity scene playing off of each other. It just doesn't get any better than that. And I love Carol Kane.
What did you think of Wallace Shawn's character?
I think he's fine. He is what he is. He's the arrogant guy who hires the other two guys. I mean, he's not intended to be lovable. He's the guy who gets killed. because when Carrie Elway fights the three, he has to go through the three trials, right? The sword fight, the physical fight, and then the mental fight. Walshawn's the only one who dies. He's the only one who gets killed. So he has to be the most reprehensible, the most loathsome of the three.
Inconceivable.
And
but
I actually found him fairly funny.
I thought
I think Walshawn is a funny guy.
My favorite line in the whole movie is when he's talking about how smart he is, and he's like, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. Ever heard of them? Morons. He's like, how smart are you? Ever heard of Plato, Socrates? Morons.
I mean, the one that most gets quoted by him, and it gets quoted all the time, is because it comes up in political and stuff all the time, is the you made the classic blunder, never get involved in a land war in Asia.
Yeah. yeah. Never get a land war in Asia. And what was the other one?
Never go up against a Sicilian.
A Sicilian when it comes to when death is on. Never go up against a Sicilian when death is on the line. Is it a classic trope? I wonder, because you have the fairy tale journey where you had the 3 tests in the first act, and then he gets his true love, and then you have the fire swamp, and then the first act ends with Christopher Guest shown. By the way, Christopher Guest, he's an example of how to be wonderful without saying anything. If you look at him in those scenes, he has this fierce deadpan stare in his eyes, and he doesn't blink, and he's just staring. And all the scenes when he's in the background, if you just go back and watch it, he just has this intense stare.
Yeah, no, and that's the other thing, that not only are our main characters great, we love Farm Boy and the princess and Fezzik and Inigo, our main characters who are actually on the quest are all great, but the bad guys are all great. The creepy 6-handed dude who likes to torture people with his big machine, he's fantastic. Like every line he has with the prince, like you said, it's kind of a love story. You got these two guys; they seem like they're very
Chris
close
Sarandon.
friends, and
he's like,
Chris,
"I love to watch you work. You know how much I love to watch you work."
but they're fantastic together, and even little moments like when the princess is taken away, and Carrie Elway says to, what's the name of his character, the Count Rugen? When he says to Count Rugen, he says, "We are men of action. Lies do not become us." And Count Rugen just says, "Well spoken, sir," and then hits him on the head and knocks it out. But it's like it's delivered with such honesty. Like in that moment, I believe that Count Rugen is kind of impressed by Farm Boy. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're right. We shouldn't be lying to each other. We're going to be honest with each other from now on." And it's that kind of thing. It's the funny also with the honest, the emotionally honest, that makes Princess Bride so unusual.
When Robin Wright Penn comes in and
well, she was only Robin Wright at that point, wasn't she?
Oh, she was Robin Wright. Yeah, she was Princess Buttercup. But when she comes in and he says, I'm gonna have every ship in the kingdom out, and she's like, what about the
except your 4 fast,
except the 4 fast ones. The 4 fast ones are going 4 ways or whatever. There is a few moments in there where him and Christopher Guest are kind of like schoolboys, like, "Oh yeah," and they kind of look at each other. It's like, "Oh yeah, we sent this thing," and they kind of go, over.
Of course not those 4.
Yeah, there's a subtle humor all the way throughout, and if you watch it and you look, it's like it's boom, 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 and it's really hilarious, and it's unique. Yep. It's special. It's something I haven't. It's hard to. I don't know. I mean, I guess what was the movie that you referenced that was very similar to this?
Oh, Galaxy Quest.
Galaxy Quest. Yeah, Galaxy Quest and stuff like that. But we don't see this type of movie very often.
No, it's an incredibly difficult tightrope to walk. And the other side of it, and I don't know if this is just my personal theory. I think audiences like when a movie is only one thing. I think the mass audience, they want one thing. They go to see an action movie, they just want action. They go to see a love story, they just want a love story, right? They don't like when things get blurred in. And almost all of the movies that became cult classics are this weird blurring of multiple things, which on multiple rewatches you go, "Oh yeah, that's actually great." But if you went out and you got pizza and then you went to a movie and then you're going to the bar afterwards and your friends are all hanging around, like this doesn't play as well on the first viewing, and there's always going to be the person who goes, I thought the sets looked really cheap, because they do. I mean, it's like a stage play. It's got cheap sets. It's clearly on a sound stage. All of that stuff. You're going to get people complain about that, and then it's only on the multiple rewatches that you go, oh, the cheap sets are part of the charm. It's part of this. It is a story being told by a grandfather to his grandson, and his grandson is building the sets in his mind. This is the 12-year-old version of what these things look like, because it's the 12-year-old imagining it. And that charm isn't clear on the first viewing. I think that's why movies like, Galaxy Quest didn't do great in the theater. This movie didn't do great in the theater. And they wind up becoming cult classics. All the things that did huge box office this same year, very few of them have anybody remembers them. But
It's
this
a Wonderful
is a movie
Life.
that people are still watching.
Wasn't a big
Was not a
hit
big hit.
movie.
Yeah, well, that one wasn't a big hit until it fell out of copyright, and every network started showing it on Christmas because they could show it for free.
And that
suddenly,
movie,
it became a huge hit.
masterpiece. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have some fun stuff for us, Joseph?
Hold on one second. I got some questions, and then we will have our top 5. Well, our top 5 2 ways. Alrighty, we got some what the Time That Guy patrons would like to know. First off, Linetra asks, have either of you ever fenced or wanted to learn sword fighting? If so, were you any good?
I did when I was a young man and still like in martial arts and stuff. I did kendo.
Oh, wow.
So I did Japanese style fencing. I was not particularly good. No, I didn't do it long enough to really get good at it. The thing that the instructor told me is that I was fast. I've always been very, very fast. Like my hands have always been very fast. And so I could whip that sword around crazy fast. And he was like, if only you could pair that with any intelligence about what you're doing, you would be very good at this. So apparently I was faster than all my opponents, but I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. So I get lost anyway. Oh yeah.
So I loved, when I was a kid, I always longed for toy swords. So my kids have an armory of toy swords. So I sword fight every day, and I
nice.
fuck my kids up. So
You teach them a lesson, because once they get 15 plus, they're gonna whoop daddy's ass.
the fact that they're 7 and 9, oh yeah, they're gonna have a head full of vengeance when they start to get older. But yeah, we sword fight constantly. So sometimes I'll be sitting there watching TV or something, I'll say whack. I get whacked in the back of the head, and I turn around, and I'm just getting attacked. I'm getting attacked by one of them's holding me down with a Nerf gun, just pinning me down, and the other one just whacking me with a sword.
See, they've got tactics, man.
Oh, they got tactics. You saying when they get older, they're going to be a threat. They're a threat now. They're sneaky. They work together as teams, and they can't, sometimes if I'm in, if I go to bed earlier than they do, and then sometimes they'll come in and just dive bomb me, and then we just throw down on the beds there. So, but the great thing about swords is they don't have serial numbers. so when you murder somebody, they can't track your sword down.
No. The murder weapon of choice is the shotgun.
The shotgun.
Yeah, shotgun pellets leave no ballistic information.
How many bodies does that sword have on it?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it stacked some bodies before it came to me.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
The ghost will haunt you at night.
The ghost will haunt you. Alrighty. V Salt asks, excluding this film, what is the greatest movie kiss of all time?
Greatest movie kiss of all time?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I'm not a romance guy, so I don't.
Yeah, I know.
I am. Let me think.
Wes had a good one with Ryan Reynolds' wife.
Yeah, that was nice.
So, is Ryan Reynolds kind of come after you at some point, or
he was there?
He was in
the nicest guy in the world.
Was he dressed up as Superman and furiously masturbating in a closet?
Wait, that was him? Oh, that was you.
Okay, let me Google the top romantic films.
Yeah, give me some choices. But I like this.
Okay,
question.
my favorite kiss is the kiss at the end of Life Force, where she's kissing the astronaut.
Okay, that works for me. I'm getting that B-roll in there. Just maybe your face will be pasted over some bits.
Yeah, that's my favorite kiss of all time.
I think patrons might say The Notebook. I don't know why.
16 Candles, that was a great kiss. I like kisses that have story significance. Like the ending of the story where she gets what she wants, and then you have that, you can end the story at that point, is in 16 Candles. Empire Strikes Back, when was that kiss?
That's the Leia and Han Solo kiss.
Oh, that's a good kiss.
That would be mine as well.
I do like in Star Wars when Luke kisses his sister.
I know.
You scruffy nerf herder.
When I saw that, I was like, see, Lori? There's nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with it.
Okay. Andrew asks, how different of a movie would it have been if Danny DeVito was cast as Vincenzi, or I forget how to say his name, and Arnold Schwarzenegger ended up as Fezzik?
Well, we did talk about it a little bit. I don't think it would have been as strong with Arnold Schwarzenegger as Fezzik, but I would have loved Danny DeVito.
I think Danny DeVito could do an amazing job with that same part.
Yeah.
Now, I love Wallace Shawn, and I'm happy that he did it because I think he's great in it. But if we lived in an alternate universe where it was Danny DeVito instead of Wallace Shawn, I think it's still a good movie. I think Danny DeVito is an amazing comedic actor.
Yeah, Wallace Shawn, I always enjoy him in everything he does, and I enjoyed him in this. But if you said Danny DeVito was going to be in it, then I would be stoked. That was a good question.
Alrighty, and last question. Jerry asks, what are your favorite sword fights or duels in cinema?
Conan has some good ones.
Conan has some great
the thing, again, like we just did Conan last week, but the fight consistency in Conan is like some of the best.
I would say that the three-way fight between, and this is after they've assaulted Mount Doom, between Conan, Rexor, and Thulsa Doom's orgy room is one of my favorite fights in cinema.
And what I love about Conan is it's not overwhelming odds. It's not like you wouldn't believe that they could do this if they were skilled swordsmen. It's kind of like movies can become, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. There's some
but that whole movie is just one big sword fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also love the sword fight between Lucy Liu and the bride in
Uma Thurman?
Kill Bill.
And Kill Bill.
Yeah,
I do too.
The sword,
that was
and it's
fantastic.
like it's a long sequence because it's her taking out all of the crazy 88s and then fighting Lucy Liu. I think that's a fantastic sequence. I think it's really well made. And somebody I love is the person who does almost all the work in it, because my favorite stunt woman of all time, Zoe Bell. I'm sorry, I'm drunk. Zoe Bell does almost all of the stunt work for it, and she's fucking awesome.
All right, let me share the top 5. We're doing top 5 fairy tale movies, and we're doing a little bit, little light and dark. Obviously, Princess Bride is in the 0 spot, unless you want to say, Johnny Boy was a princess. And
can we put Princess Bride on the regular list, because I might have a hard time filling this one up. You know what? I love have you ever seen The Adventures in Baron Munchausen?
Yeah, I have.
I really liked that movie growing up. I never saw Tangled.
Yeah, you got boys.
Splash. Good call. That's a good fairy tale. Yeah.
That was one I loved growing up.
I love Splash. And Splash is another movie. You go back and watch it and you're like, why does this movie work? Why is this? Yeah. And it's so fun and it's so heartfelt.
It works partly because Tom Hanks was coming into his own, and he's an incredibly charismatic actor.
Yeah.
Well, I don't care if either of you guys have not seen this movie.
I have seen Howl's Moving Castle, and it's great.
Thank you.
Yep. All of his stuff is great. You could say anything he's done.
Would you say Shrek?
I think Shrek is a movie of its time. It does not hold up now at all, because everything in it is a pop culture reference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, when it first came out, it was funny and we all laughed. But now you watch it and you're like, oh yeah, they're making fun of.
What do you guys think of
the 80s?
Of Big Fish?
I thought it was okay.
Now I know a lot of people love Stardust. I've like kind of watched it, but and it's funny is because like Robert De Niro's in it as well.
Yeah,
which it's always on my list to watch it start to finish.
I don't know if you would consider it light or like this whole light dark thing. I'm not sure if I totally.
Okay. Well, we can just go with one list then.
The one I'm looking to see if it's on your list here. Fuck. How did the title of this movie just fly out of my head? It's the dude and
I've never seen Stardust.
The Fisher King.
The Fisher King.
Yeah.
The Fisher King. I think the Fisher King is absolutely a fairy tale.
Yeah. I did too. It's great. So if we're doing, because I'm looking at dark and I'm like, oh, maybe I'm a bigger dark fairy tale fan.
Well, let's just go with one list then.
For sure. Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass are my favorite books of all time. And they have never, ever done a good adaptation of them. Ever.
Of
all the adaptations
time?
of them suck.
Of all time?
Of all time.
That is huge. I've never heard you say that about a book before. Pan's Labyrinth is on my list. That's my favorite.
Is fantastic.
That's my favorite Guillermo del Toro movie.
Yeah, Pan's Labyrinth is fantastic. Princess Mononoke is, again, talking about, Howl's Moving Castle. Princess Mononoke is amazing.
Oh, Time Bandits, Last Unicorn, Dark Crystal. I went and saw Dark Crystal in the theater.
Now, Ty, have you seen The Last Unicorn?
Yeah, of course.
Do you know that Studio Ghibli, essentially that's their movie they made before becoming a studio?
Oh, really?
Like all the people that made The Last Unicorn, Hayao Miyazaki, essentially took the entire studio and formed Studio Ghibli.
I did not know that. Know that. I will say, I don't think it's a great movie, but I love Legend.
I love Legend.
I agree with Legend.
You know what? It's a classic Ridley Scott where his atmosphere and the sets and the characters are just unbelievable. The story is okay, but the Tim Robbins in that, like his character.
Tim Robbins?
You mean?
Oh,
Tim
sorry,
Curry.
What's his name? Not Tim Robbins.
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry.
Now I'm imagining Darkness played by Tim Robbins.
Tim Curry, and I wonder if Tim Curry did that before he did it. Like because that character fascinated me as a kid.
Yeah.
That big dark devil who was in love with the girl and like from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and like, that movie was phenomenal. Tom Cruise,
Every
young
wolf
Tom
has
Cruise.
Fleas. 'Tis easy enough to scratch.
Dark as night, dark as pitch, dark as the blackest moon.
No, it's a Blix. Are you not the foulest of my goblins? Is your heart not black? Black as night, black as pitch, blacker than the foulest witch.
Black as night.
Such a good movie.
Those troll things are like, oh god, that movie looks fantastic, and it holds up to this day. It's fantastic.
The look of it is great. Yeah, my friend used to joke that like most Ridley Scott movies are a movie with a lot of atmosphere in it, and Legend is a lot of atmosphere with a little movie in it.
The Time Bandits is a movie that like I absolutely loved as a kid.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it lately.
I rewatched it a couple of years ago. I still loved it. Like it's silly and ridiculous and awesome.
It's back when Sean Connery was just collecting checks.
Yeah,
and he was.
Well, he was working on what movie was he working on when he did that? And essentially, we talked about an Outland. Yeah, he was working on Outland.
Oh yeah,
and they worked it out so where in the morning he could go over and shoot the stuff for Time Bandits, and then he would come back, and then he was in space.
I read The Never Ending Story to the kids, to my boys. They loved that. The Last Unicorn. I don't think they've seen that. Dense magic dense. I showed them Labyrinth too. They love Labyrinth. When the kids start, when those animals start ripping off their heads, you know, and start like, and they're like, what are they? And then they started juggling each other's heads and everything. Come on, we just want to take your head off. You know, they love that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like an easy top 5.
I liked Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah, Edward Scissorhands is one of his best movies for sure. Like go back to the top. Out of the ones that are up at the top, like could you pick a top 5 out of that?
I could eliminate the Baron Munchausen.
Yeah,
the moving
and I would
castle.
take out Splash too.
Take out Splash.
Okay.
Take out the Fisher King. I would for this. I didn't see the Princess Mononoke.
Princess Mononoke and Howl's Moving Castle are amazing, and if you take them off the list, you are wrong.
Okay, I haven't seen them.
I'll say this is an honorable mention. How about that? Because if I had to pick between the two, Howl's would be more my cup of tea.
Pan's Labyrinth, Legend,
Pan's Labyrinth, though, is,
I think that's a solid 5.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good picks. Now, the patrons did do the 2 versions. So this was their light.
Well, they like Howl's Moving Castle, so they're good. Yep.
So they can stay.
Shrek is the pop pick. And then their dark, I think, is pretty close. A little bit more closer.
Yep.
Yes.
It's very close.
All right. We're going to wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Please like and subscribe and ring that little bell. We love you. This was fun. We'll see you next time. Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.